starting with number 1 Sukhoi Su-27 flanker. Ukraine, first confirmed loss, February 24, 2022. Ukraine's frontline air superiority fighter, the Su-27, entered the conflict on its very first day. Designed during the Cold War as a direct counter to American F-15s, the flanker was one of the most capable jets in Ukrainian inventory. On the morning of February 24th, as Russian forces crossed the border simultaneously from multiple directions, Ukrainian Su-27s scrambled to defend against overwhelming odds. At least one was confirmed destroyed within hours. Shot down in the chaos of an airspace suddenly saturated with Russian missiles, jamming, and fourth-generation fighters operating with the advantage of surprise. The loss signaled immediately that Ukraine's air force would be fighting a war of survival, not supremacy. 2. Mikoyan MiG-29 Fulcrum. Ukraine, February 24, 2022. Flying alongside the flanker on that first day was Ukraine's MiG-29, the lighter, shorter-range tactical fighter that formed the backbone of Ukrainian tactical aviation. Fast, maneuverable, and beloved by its pilots, the MiG-29 was nonetheless operating against an adversary with numerical superiority. Advanced beyond visual range missiles and airborne early warning aircraft Ukraine could not match. Multiple MiG-29s were confirmed lost in the opening 72 hours, destroyed both in aerial engagements and on the ground as Russian crews and ballistic missiles struck Ukrainian air bases. The aircraft that Ukraine's pilots had trained on for decades was suddenly disappearing at a rate the country could not sustain. 3. Sukhoi Su-25 Frogfoot, Ukraine, late February 2022. Built specifically for close air support, the Su-25 was Ukraine's primary tool for striking ground targets, a rugged, armored jet designed to absorb punishment while flying low and slow over the battlefield. That same design philosophy became its vulnerability in 2022. Flying into airspace defended by Russian short-range air defense systems, including Pantsir S-1 and Buk M2 batteries, Ukrainian Su-25 pilots were forced into the same threat envelope their aircraft was designed to operate in. Several were lost in the opening weeks, pilots either ejecting into active combat zones or going down with their aircraft. The Frogfoot continued flying throughout the war, but every sortie carried a risk that crews accepted with grim awareness. 4. Sukhoi Su-24M Fencer. Ukraine, February. March 2022. Ukraine's aging variable sweep swing-wing bomber, the Su-24M, was tasked with standoff strike missions, hitting Russian logistics, armor concentrations, and command nodes. Introduced in the Soviet era and barely modernized since, the Fencer carried advanced weapons, but lacked the electronic warfare systems needed to survive a modern integrated air defense network. At least 2 were confirmed lost in the early weeks, either intercepted by Russian fighters or brought down by surface-to-air missiles during penetration missions. The aircraft was simply too old, too exposed, and too dependent on routing through threat corridors that Russian forces had already mapped and covered. 5. Sukhoi Su-27 Flanker, Russia. February 24th to 25th, 2022. Russia's own flankers entered the war with the confidence of numerical superiority and technological advantage, and began taking losses almost immediately. Ukrainian pilots, trained to NATO tactical standards and fighting a defensive war over familiar terrain, engaged Russian aircraft with a ferocity that caught Moscow's planners off guard. At least one Russian Su-27 was confirmed destroyed in the opening 48 hours, the wreckage later photographed on Ukrainian soil. These early Russian losses were not expected. The assumption inside the Russian Air Force, the VKS, had been rapid air dominance. Instead, what emerged was a contested sky where neither side could operate with impunity. 6. Sukhoi Su-35S Flankery, Russia. March 2022. The Su-35S was Russia's most advanced operational air superiority fighter, a thrust-vectoring, sensor-fused, fourth-generation plus aircraft that was supposed to be near untouchable in a permissive or semi-permissive environment. Its loss in March 2022 was psychologically significant. Confirmed shot down over northern Ukraine, the Su-35S wreckage was documented and widely circulated. The aircraft fell not because it was outclassed by a superior fighter, but because it operated in a complex, multi-layered threat environment where Ukrainian manpads, short-range SAMs, and ground-based radar integration created kill zones that sophisticated aircraft, flown at low altitude to avoid detection, stumbled into. The loss proved that technology, without tactics and coordination, is never enough. 7. Sukhoi Su-34 Fullback, Russia, February, March 2022. Russia's dedicated strike aircraft. The Su-34 was designed to penetrate defended airspace and deliver precision munitions. It is a large, twin-seat aircraft with a side-by-side cockpit arrangement and significant internal fuel capacity, built for deep interdiction missions. Multiple Su-34s were confirmed destroyed in the first weeks of the war, some in aerial engagements, others brought down by Ukrainian surface-to-air missiles. What made these losses particularly significant was the Su-34's cost. Each airframe represents approximately $36 to $50 million, and its supposed survivability. Russia was losing its primary precision strike platform at a rate that forced tactical adjustments, eventually pushing VKS aircraft to release munitions from well within Ukrainian SAM engagement ranges. 8. Sukhoi Su-25 Frogfoot, Russia, February, March 2022. Russian Su-25s suffered the same structural problem as their Ukrainian counterparts, but with a critical difference in context. Russia was the aggressor operating over a country that still possessed intact, dispersed, and operational air defense networks, flying close air support missions in support of armored columns that were themselves stalled, disorganized, and under constant Ukrainian fire. Russian Su-25 pilots found themselves in some of the most lethal low-altitude airspace of the modern era. Multiple aircraft were confirmed lost, with at least one crew captured. The Frogfoot's heavy armor protected its pilot in some instances, but the sheer density of Ukrainian manpads, including thousands of Stinger and Igla systems, made every low pass a gamble. 9. Ilyushin Il-76 Candid, Russia, February 24, 2022. On the very first day of the invasion, Russian forces attempted a heliborne and airlift assault on Hostomel Airport near Kiev, a bold gambit intended to seize a key airfield and open a direct air corridor into the capital. The operation involved Il-76 heavy military transport aircraft, and at least one was confirmed destroyed either during approach or on the ground after a failed landing attempt. The loss of an Il-76 was not merely an aircraft loss. It was the collapse of a strategic concept. The Hostomel raid ultimately failed, and with it, Russia's hope of a rapid decapitation of the Ukrainian government. 10. Mi-8 HIP, Russia, February 24, 2022. The Mi-8 is arguably the most widely used military helicopter in post-Soviet history, a workhorse transport and medevac platform that Russia has deployed in virtually every conflict since Afghanistan. At Hostomel and in the initial airborne assault operations, Russian Mi-8s flew into airspace that Ukrainian defenders had not yet abandoned. Multiple were shot down on the opening day alone, some by manpads, others by ground fire and shoulder-launched rockets. The losses were photographed, filmed, and shared globally within hours. The Mi-8's vulnerabilities in contested airspace, its size, its noise signature, its lack of speed, made it an accessible target even for infantry with basic training and patience. 11 Mi-24 Hind, Russia, February, March 2022. The Mi-24 is an attack helicopter with a fearsome visual profile and a combat legacy stretching from Afghanistan to Syria. In Ukraine, it flew escort for transport helicopters and conducted direct fire support missions against Ukrainian positions. But the Hind's reputation as an airborne fortress was challenged almost immediately. Ukrainian forces, equipped with Stinger manpads and later more capable systems, shot down multiple Mi-24s in the opening weeks. The Hind flies fast and carries serious armor, but it operates at altitudes and speeds where a trained operator with a modern infrared-seeking missile has a measurable probability of kill. Several confirmed losses included crews killed on impact. 12. Mi-28 Havoc, Russia, March 2022. Russia's dedicated attack helicopter, purpose-built for anti-armor warfare and designed with redundant systems and armored cockpit protection. began taking losses as the war settled into its attritional middle phase. The Mi-28's combat role in Ukraine was to hunt Ukrainian armor and provide direct fire support during assaults. That role required it to operate close to the ground, in valleys and tree lines below radar, but also well within the range of Ukrainian anti-aircraft systems. Multiple Mi-28s were confirmed destroyed, some during attack runs, at least one photographed as a smoking wreck in open farmland. Each loss represented not just an airframe, but an experienced crew and months of specialized training. 13 Ka-52 Alligator, Russia, March, April 2022. The Ka-52 is Russia's most advanced attack helicopter, a coaxial rotor design with helmet-mounted sighting systems and fire-and-forget anti-tank missiles. It was expected to be Russia's decisive close air support tool. Instead, the Ka-52 became the most visible symbol of the VKS's struggles in Ukraine. Dozens were confirmed destroyed, an extraordinary attrition rate for a frontline attack helicopter. The reasons were structural. Ka-52s were used in mass assault operations, particularly the Hostomel approach and later Kherson Axis attacks, where they flew into dense concentrations of Ukrainian air defense without adequate suppression. Footage of Ka-52s being struck mid-flight circulated widely. For a platform marketed globally as an export success story, the losses were deeply damaging to Russia's defense branding. 14. Sukhoi Su-30SM Flanker H, Russia, March 2022. The Su-30SM is a multi-role twin-engine fighter, derived from the Su-27 family, designed for both air superiority and ground attack. In the hands of a capable crew, it is a dangerous aircraft. Its loss in March 2022, confirmed through wreckage imagery, was attributed to friendly fire in at least one documented incident, a catastrophic failure of coordination in a war where Russian airspace management was consistently poor. The incident highlighted a broader problem. Russian forces were operating in a compressed, overlapping airspace without the IFF, identification friend or foe, integration that NATO standard forces take for granted. Aircraft shot down by their own side is not a rare anomaly in war, but it is a devastating indictment of operational planning. 15 MiG-29 Fulcrum, Russia, early 2022. Russian MiG-29s, while less capable than the Su-35S or Su-30SM, were still active participants in the air campaign over Ukraine. At least one confirmed loss occurred in the early months of the war. The MiG-29 in Russian service was older than its Ukrainian counterparts in many cases, with deferred maintenance and limited upgrade integration, a consequence of the VKS prioritizing newer airframes. Its loss underscored that the Russian Air Force was not a monolithic, modernized force, but a layered inventory of platforms at varying levels of readiness. 16. Berev A-50 Mainstay, Russia, January 2024. The loss of the A-50 was among the most strategically significant air losses of the entire war. The A-50 is Russia's airborne early warning and control aircraft, its equivalent of the American E-3 Sentry, and it serves as the eyes of the VKS over the battlefield, coordinating fighter intercepts and providing the radar picture that Russian pilots depend on for situational awareness. Only a handful of operational A-50s exist in the Russian inventory. When one was shot down over the Sea of Azov in January 2024, confirmed through Ukrainian official statements, and subsequently supported by satellite imagery and wreckage reports, it represented an irreplaceable loss. The aircraft that dies in air defense networks when an A-50 disappears is difficult to fully quantify, but the effect on Russian air operations was immediate and measurable. 17. Ilyushin IL-22M Kut, Russia, January 2024. Shot down in the same period as the A-50, the IL-22M is a command and control relay aircraft, an airborne signals intelligence and communications platform that Russia uses to coordinate operations across wide fronts. Like the A-50, it is a high-value non-combat aircraft whose loss has cascading effects far beyond the individual airframe. Its destruction over the Sea of Azov, in the same general engagement that brought down the A-50, was attributed to Ukrainian long-range surface-to-air missile employment, reportedly using the S-200 system modified for air-to-air-like engagement profiles. The simultaneous loss of both aircraft in a single operational period was a significant intelligence and coordination blow to Russian aviation. 18. Sukhoi Su-57 Felon, Russia, 2024. Russia's fifth-generation stealth fighter. Its answer to the American F-22 and F-35 was confirmed destroyed in a strike on a Russian airbase deep inside Russian territory in 2024. The Su-57 was not shot down in aerial combat. It was struck on the ground by a Ukrainian drone attack. The distinction matters, but the outcome is the same. Russia lost one of its most advanced and rarest operational aircraft. With only a small number of Su-57s in service and production rates constrained by sanctions and supply chain disruptions, even a single airframe loss is significant. The fact that Ukraine could reach the aircraft inside Russian airspace with an unmanned system demonstrated a new dimension of the conflict, one that did not require air-to-air engagement to destroy air power. 19. Sukhoi Su-34 Fullback, Russia, 2023 to 2024 continued losses. The Su-34's losses did not stop in the early phase of the war. Through 2023 and into 2024, confirmed Su-34 destructions continued to accumulate, many attributed to Ukrainian Patriot PAC-2 and PAC-3 missile intercepts as the systems arrived and became operational. Ukrainian air defenders, advised by NATO partners and operating with increasingly capable Western equipment, developed tactics specifically designed to engage high-value Russian strike aircraft that were releasing glide bombs at medium altitude. The Su-34 crews, forced by tactics to fly predictable release profiles, became increasingly vulnerable. The cumulative total of Su-34 losses across the war represents one of the most significant attrition rates for a modern strike aircraft in any post-Cold War conflict. 20 mm 8 HIP, Ukraine, 2022 to 2023. Ukrainian Mi-8s were not passive in this war. Flying resupply missions into encircled positions, casualty evacuations under fire, and special operations insertions. Ukrainian helicopter crews accepted extraordinary risk to keep isolated units alive. Multiple Mi-8s were lost to Russian surface-to-air missiles and ground fire, particularly during the Mariupol evacuation operations and missions supporting defenders in the Donbass. The crews who flew those missions did so knowing the odds. Several did not return. The Mi-8 losses on the Ukrainian side represent some of the most operationally consequential individual aircraft destructions of the war. 21 mm 24 Hind, Ukraine, 2022 to 2023. Ukraine's Mi-24 fleet flew in circumstances no doctrine writer would have approved. Outnumbered, outranged by Russian air defense, and committed to missions where the margin for error was effectively zero. Ukrainian Hind crews supported ground forces throughout the eastern and southern fronts. Losses accumulated over the course of the war, with confirmed wreckage documented across multiple oblasts. What made Ukrainian Mi-24 losses particularly significant was the irreplaceability of the platform. Ukraine had no production source for replacements, and every lost airframe narrowed the options available to ground commanders who desperately needed close air support. 22 Sukhoi Su-25 Frogfoot, Ukraine, ongoing, 2022 to 2024. Ukraine's Su-25 fleet continued to absorb losses well into the middle years of the war, despite upgrades and the integration of Western anti-radiation missiles that allowed pilots to target Russian radar systems. The fundamental vulnerability of a subsonic, close-air support aircraft in a dense SAM environment never changed. Pilots who flew Su-25 missions over contested territory knew that evasive maneuvers, countermeasures, and low-altitude routing gave them survivability margins that remained unacceptably thin. Multiple confirmed losses occurred each year of the conflict. The Su-25 is a tough aircraft. It has brought pilots home with one engine and structural damage that would have destroyed a less rugged design, but the mathematics of sustained attrition are unforgiving. 23 MiG-29 Fulcrum, Ukraine, 2022 to 2024. Ukraine's MiG-29 fleet, already small at the start of the war, suffered consistent attrition throughout the conflict. Each confirmed loss narrowed the pool of available airframes to a point where individual aircraft became irreplaceable. Western partners responded eventually by pledging MiG-29s from Polish and Slovak inventories, transfers that occurred in 2023. But the pipeline of replacements never fully kept pace with the rate of combat loss and operational wear. Ukrainian MiG-29 pilots flew under rules of engagement and tactical constraints imposed not just by doctrine, but by the simple scarcity of aircraft they could not afford to lose. The tension between operational need and airframe preservation defined every sortie. 24 Sukhoi Su-24M Fencer. Ukraine, 2022 to 2024. Ukraine's Fencer fleet continued its strike missions throughout the war with periodic losses. The aircraft's role evolved. As Western weapons became available, Su-24MS became the primary carrier for British Storm Shadow and French Scalp cruise missiles, long-range precision munitions that allowed Ukrainian pilots to strike deep targets without entering the most lethal layers of Russian air defense. The integration of those weapons transformed the Su-24 from an aging liability into a strategic asset. But even aircraft delivering long-range standoff weapons must eventually enter airspace that Russian air defenses are designed to cover, and confirmed losses continued throughout the operational period. 25 Kamov 52 Alligator, Russia, 2023 to 2024 continued losses. By the middle period of the war, the Ka-52 had become a case study in the misapplication of a capable platform. Russian commanders continued deploying Ka-52s in assault support roles despite sustained losses, adjusting tactics incrementally, flying lower, releasing weapons at greater standoff, but never fully solving the fundamental problem. Ukrainian ground forces were equipped with the density and quality of air defense systems needed to engage attack helicopters across nearly the entire depth of the front. The Ka-52's losses in aggregate, confirmed by Oryx's open-source documentation at numbers exceeding a dozen airframes, represent one of the most significant rotary wing attrition stories in modern military history. 26 Mi-28 Havoc, Russia, 2023 to 2024 continued losses. The Mi-28N, the night-capable variant with a distinctive mast-mounted radar, suffered losses alongside its Ka-52 counterpart throughout the conflict. Russian attack helicopter doctrine, which had been largely shaped by the Syrian intervention where air defenses were minimal, proved poorly suited to Ukraine's threat environment. The Mi-28 is a capable aircraft. Its design philosophy prioritizes crew survivability with armored seats, redundant controls, and crash-attenuating landing gear. But survivability on the ground is meaningless if the aircraft is struck in flight at altitude. Confirmed Mi-28 losses included instances where crews survived crash landings in contested territory and were captured, providing Ukrainian intelligence with direct insight into Russian aviation tactics and equipment. 27 Sukhoi Su-35S Flankery, Russia, 2023 to 2024 continued losses. Russia's premier air superiority fighter continued to take losses well past the initial invasion phase, as Ukrainian forces received and integrated Patriot air defense systems. The dynamic shifted in 2023. Su-35S aircraft, previously operating with relative impunity at medium and high altitude beyond the effective range of older Ukrainian SAM systems, suddenly found themselves within the engagement envelope of Patriot PAC-2. At least one confirmed Su-35S destruction was attributed to Patriot employment. The loss of a fourth-generation plus fighter to a ground-based SAM was not merely a tactical event. It redefined the safe operating altitude for Russian aviation over the entire theater and forced the VKS to fundamentally restructure its approach to air operations. 28 Bayraktar TB2, Ukraine, 2022, destroyed by Russia. The Bayraktar TB2 entered the Russia-Ukraine conflict with a mythological reputation built in Libya, Nagorno-Karabakh, and northern Syria. In the opening weeks of the 2022 full-scale invasion, TB2S scored confirmed kills against Russian air defense systems, artillery, and logistics vehicles, with footage released by Ukraine generating widespread attention. But Russian forces adapted quickly, deploying electronic warfare systems and short-range air defense assets specifically tasked with neutralizing the TB2's communications and guidance links. losses mounted rapidly, and Ukraine's TB2 fleet was largely withdrawn from frontline strike missions by mid-2022. The aircraft that had seemed revolutionary in permissive environments had encountered an adversary who had studied its weaknesses thoroughly. 29. Orlan 10, Russia. Throughout 2022 to 2024, the Orlan 10 is Russia's primary tactical reconnaissance drone, a small, commercially derived unmanned aircraft used for artillery spotting, reconnaissance, and electronic warfare support. It was deployed in enormous numbers, and it was shot down in enormous numbers. Ukrainian forces downed Orlan 10s with everything available: modified Soviet-era radar systems, portable jammers, commercial drone hunting technology, and rifle fire. Exact totals are difficult to determine because of the sheer volume of employment, but confirmed losses number in the hundreds. The Orlan 10's value lay not in individual survivability, but in mass. Russia deployed them faster than Ukraine could destroy them, accepting individual losses as a cost of persistent surveillance coverage. 30. Shahid 136, Russia. Throughout 2022 to 2024, Iran's Shahid 136, redesignated Garan 2 by Russia for domestic political purposes, became one of the defining weapons of the conflict's attritional phase. A cheap, slow, propeller-driven loitering munition with a distinctive engine sound and a fragmentation warhead. The Shahid was used in saturation attacks against Ukrainian infrastructure, electrical systems, and military targets. Ukraine developed increasingly effective interception doctrines against them, using aircraft, air defense missiles, electronic warfare, and eventually guns to destroy them en masse. Hundreds were intercepted annually, but hundreds also struck their targets. The Shahid demonstrated that cheap, expendable weapons employed en masse could exhaust expensive air defense missiles, a lesson that reshaped procurement thinking across NATO member states. If you want more real-world military aviation breakdowns and modern war incidents, make sure to stay tuned. And for more updates on aircraft losses, combat footage analysis, and defense stories, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.